They said she was lucky to marry the mechanic, even though it was never her choice. What they didn't know was that the poor boy they forced into her life held the power to take everything from them. And he would, not with anger, but with silence and a signature. Amira sat in silence, staring at the ivory wedding dress draped across the bed. It wasn't hers. It belonged to a future she didn't ask for, and a life she didn't choose. Behind her, the door opened. "You're lucky we even let you wear white," her stepmother hissed. "Make it quick. You're marrying beneath you, though honestly, that fits." Amira blinked back tears. She had been adopted at 7 by the Hartleys, a wealthy white family with a flawless image and a dark obsession with control. They never loved her. Only used her to show diversity in their charities and media. But when her grades slipped once, when she stopped smiling in photos, they turned on her. "If you want to stay under this roof, you'll marry the boy we picked. Otherwise, the streets are always hiring." That boy? Jalen. The quiet car washer who lived in a shared room above the local garage. No family. No money. No future, or so they thought. To them, forcing Amira to marry him was a punishment. A way to humiliate her forever. The backyard was decorated with paper flowers and plastic chairs. No guests. No music. Just Amira in a second-hand dress, and Jalen, standing calmly in a gray button-up, dust on his boots. He smiled at her gently. "You okay?" She stared. "Why aren't you angry? This isn't your choice either." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm not here for them. Maybe I'm here, for you." His eyes were soft. And too calm. As if he knew something no one else did. By the end of the ceremony, Amira's stepmother didn't clap. She whispered to her husband, laughing, "Let's see how long she lasts with a boy who cleans hubcaps." But Jalen heard her. He didn't flinch. He simply held Amira's hand, like a man who had nothing to prove, and everything to hide. The car ride after the wedding was dead silent. Jalen drove a beat-up Honda with a cracked windshield and a missing rearview mirror. Amira clutched the bouquet she never wanted, staring out the window, too numb to cry. No honeymoon. No reception. Just a long ride across the city to a forgotten corner she'd never seen, full of rusted fences, barking dogs, and broken sidewalks. Finally, the car stopped. "This is it," Jalen said, stepping out. Before her stood a small metal shack with peeling paint and a flickering porch light. A one-room space above the auto garage. It smelled like oil and hot concrete. "This is where you live?" Amira whispered, stunned. Jalen nodded, casually lifting her suitcase. "It's not much. But it's mine." She stepped inside. There was a twin bed, a single chair, and a cracked desk. One window. No curtains. But, it was clean. Neat. Organized. With a shelf full of books on business, finance, and architecture. "You read?" she asked, almost confused. He grinned. "Every night." That night, she lay on the bed while he took the chair, quietly doing push-ups in the corner before sleeping on the floor. Not once did he touch her. Not once did he complain. He just said, "You're safe here. Even if you don't love it." Days passed. She saw his routine: wake before sunrise, help fix cars, come back, eat rice, read, sleep. Quiet. Respectful. Focused. The world saw a poor boy. But Amira started seeing something else. A blueprint. Folded and taped on the back of his closet door. Sketched perfectly. It wasn't for a car. It was a luxury building. "Did you draw this?" she asked. Jalen looked up. Smiled a little. "Yeah. It's for something I'm building, when the time's right. That night, while he showered at the gas station down the street, she opened the closet again. Inside a shoebox marked "spare parts" were papers. And one caught her eye. A check. Uncashed. Made out to Jalen Carter. Amount, $2.5 million. She froze. Her hand shook. Why would a boy who scrubs engines sleep on the floor of a shack, with $1 million check in his closet? Amira stared at the check in her hand, her heart racing. Who gives a car washer a check for $2.5 million? And why wasn't it cashed? She placed it back carefully, just as she'd found it. By the time Jalen returned, smelling like soap and rain, she was sitting on the edge of the bed pretending to read. He noticed her glance. "Everything okay?" he asked, wiping his hands on a towel. She nodded too quickly. "Yeah. Just tired." But she wasn't. She barely slept that night. Questions kept burning in her mind. "Who are you, Jalen? What are you hiding?" The next morning, she followed him. He didn't notice, too busy sweeping oil from the sidewalk outside the garage. She watched from the alley as he gave a kid a free tire patch, then handed a warm sandwich to a homeless man sitting by the wall. Why would a millionaire live like this, she whispered to herself. Later that day, she asked. If you had the chance, would you leave all this behind? Jalen didn't blink. If money's the goal, sure. But if peace is the price, I'm staying poor. That answer shook her. It wasn't just wise, it was too wise for a boy scraping grease off engine blocks. That evening, while washing dishes in the tiny sink, he said something that shifted everything. I know your family thinks they punished you by making you marry me. She looked up sharply. He kept scrubbing, calmly. But they gave me everything. A reason to stop hiding. A woman who's smarter than all of them. And a future I actually want. Amira felt her throat tighten. No one had ever spoken about her like that. Not like a burden. Not like a project. But like a person worth choosing. Still, she needed to know the truth. The next day, while he was at work, she borrowed his keys and climbed down into the garage's back office. Inside a locked drawer was a file. She pulled it open and saw the logo of Carter Capital Group, a billion-dollar real estate firm. Inside were contracts. Stock options. Building permits. And right there, printed in bold. Legal heir, Jalen Maurice Carter. She dropped the file. He wasn't just a millionaire. He was the son of one of the richest men in the city. Amira stared at the papers spread across the floor, her mind spinning. Carter Capital Group. A legacy estate worth millions. His name printed right beneath the CEO's. Her breath caught. Why would a man like that let himself live like this, she whispered. She scooped the documents up, gently sliding them back into the drawer. She didn't want to be caught snooping. Even though now, more than ever, she had to know everything. That evening, Jalen walked in with grease on his hands and a soft smile, like nothing in the world could touch him. I brought dinner. It's not 5 stars, but the beans are hot. She sat across from him at their small metal table. Who are you really? She asked quietly. He blinked. Her voice sharpened. I found the Carter file, Jalen. The company. The check. The inheritance. All of it. Silence. Then, he nodded once. I was waiting for you to ask. He stood up slowly and went to the closet. Pulled down the shoebox. This time, he opened it in front of her. Inside were not just checks, but photographs. Jalen as a child. With a smiling black woman, his mother. My mother was a secretary at Carter Capital, he said. She had me with the founder, a powerful white man who denied I was his son. Amira's heart twisted. She raised me alone. Worked 3 jobs. Never let me touch a cent of their money. He stared at a photo. She said I'd have to build something they couldn't take from me. After she passed away, the company offered him money. Stock. Access. But I wasn't going to be their token success story. I refused. Went underground. Started small. Learned the streets. Built quiet. He looked up. And then, your family shoved you into my world. They thought they threw you to the wolves. But they handed you to the one person who understands what it means to be underestimated. Amira stared at him, stunned. All the judgment her family had poured on him. All the mocking. And yet, here he stood, calm. Gentle. Powerful without arrogance. So why stay poor, she asked. He smiled. Because peace isn't in the money. It's in knowing who I am, with or without it. The next morning, Amira woke up different. Not because the bed was softer. Not because the room had changed. But because her heart had. She looked at Jalen, peaceful on the floor, arms folded behind his head, eyes closed, and realized something unthinkable. She didn't feel trapped anymore. The man her family used to shame her was more honest, more stable, and more protective than anyone she'd ever known. But outside their walls, the Hartleys had other plans. Her stepmother, Elise, was already on the phone with her friends. It's been 5 days, she laughed. I bet she's begging for a mattress and a lawyer. At brunch, she showed off a blurry photo of Amira sweeping the garage floor. See? It's what she was meant for. The gossip spread like fire, social media comments, whispers at country clubs, even an anonymous blog post. When your black adopted daughter marries trash. It made Amira's stomach turn. But Jalen? He didn't flinch. You don't throw fire at glass houses unless you're ready for it to shatter, he said. A few days later, Amira received an invitation in the mail, cream-colored, gold-trimmed. Her family was throwing a formal dinner to celebrate her transition into her new life. Which really meant, to humiliate her publicly. They expected her to come dressed in shame, dragging her mechanic husband behind her. Amira stared at the invitation. Then looked at Jalen. We're going. He raised an eyebrow. Sure. She nodded. They're going to learn tonight, I didn't marry beneath me. I married above them. They showed up in a quiet black SUV. Jalen wore a fitted black button-down. Clean jeans. Fresh haircut. Amira wore a sleek dress she borrowed from the garage owner's daughter. The house was buzzing with judgment as they stepped through the doors. Laughter stopped. Forks paused midair. Elise smiled like a villain in pearls. Oh, you came. Amira smiled back. Of course. I wouldn't miss my celebration. But what none of them knew was that Jalen had made a phone call that morning. One that would turn the Hartleys' little dinner party into a breaking news story. The dining hall sparkled with chandeliers and fake warmth. But the second Amira and Jalen entered, the room shifted. People didn't know whether to sneer or stare. Some leaned in and whispered like schoolchildren. Is that the husband? Where'd he get those clothes? He looks normal. Too normal. At the head of the table, Elise lifted her wine glass. We are gathered to welcome Amira and her charming new companion. What a journey it must be. From luxury to simplicity. Polite laughs trickled around the room like poison. Jalen's hand rested lightly on Amira's waist. Calm. Silent. He didn't say a word. Yet the room felt like it belonged to him. Dinner began. Courses served with cold smiles. Questions disguised as insults. So, Jalen, do you plan to start a business someday? How's life in the garage? Did you too elope out of desperation? Amira kept her chin high. But Jalen? He finally leaned forward. Actually, he said, my business is already running. Forks paused. We just opened our 6th property. Quiet growth. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Someone scoffed. 6 garages. He smiled. No. 6 buildings. In 4 cities. The table went silent. That's when it happened. The door opened, and a tall, suited man stepped in. Gray hair. Sunglasses. Security badge. He walked straight to Jalen and placed a folder in front of him. Here's the final sign-off. We're ready for tomorrow's announcement. Elisa's voice cracked. What announcement? The man turned. Oh, you must be the Hartleys. Your neighborhood association's being bought out by Carter Holdings. Your block was selected for redevelopment. The color drained from Elisa's face. Jalen opened the folder. Flipped to the last page. This is just a courtesy. I don't usually do personal visits. But tonight seemed special. He signed the paper with a solid penstroke. You see, I didn't just come here as a guest. He stood. Turned to the room. I came as the man buying your future. The room buzzed with confusion. Forks clinked. Wine glasses trembled. And Elise? She clutched her pearls like she'd just seen a ghost. You're Carter, she whispered. That Carter? Jalen looked at her with the softest smile, the kind that made rich people nervous. My mother gave me the name. The world ignored her. But I didn't. Amira's stepfather sat frozen, face pale. This is a setup, some trick. Jalen placed the signed documents in front of him. Your HOA agreement. Your land's been under offer for months. I could have let someone else close the deal. But after what you did to Amira, I wanted to do it myself. The dinner party was no longer a party. It was a reckoning. One guest tried to lighten the mood. Wow, Jalen. You really pulled a fast one. So, were you testing her the whole time? He looked up sharply. No. She was never the one being tested. He turned to Amira. She treated me with dignity when she thought I had nothing. She protected me in silence. That's wealth. That's power. Amira's eyes welled, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of them. After the final course, Jalen stood up. We'll take our leave now. I have a meeting in the morning. With your bank. The Hartleys didn't move. Couldn't speak. As they reached the door, Elise whispered, bitter and low. You were never supposed to win. Jalen turned halfway. Then maybe you shouldn't have played dirty. In the car, Amira sat in silence, watching the city lights flicker past. Jalen drove calmly, his hand resting near hers. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. I think that's the first time in years I felt proud to be part of something. He smiled, eyes on the road. Then you better hold on. We're just getting started. Back at the garage apartment, she sat on the bed, surrounded by blueprints and business books. And suddenly, none of it felt small anymore. The space hadn't changed. But she had. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window like gold. Amira stood in front of the mirror, brushing out her curls. For the first time since the wedding, she wasn't just seeing herself as the girl they forced into a mistake. She saw someone choosing. Choosing to stay. Choosing to build. Choosing him. Jalen was at the little table, sipping instant coffee and reviewing documents on a cracked laptop. Want to come with me today? He asked. Where? He smiled. To meet the people who really run my company. An hour later, they arrived at a quiet co-working space in the city, nothing flashy. Inside were 5 people of all ages and backgrounds, huddled around whiteboards, sipping cheap coffee and arguing passionately. "This is the team," Jalen said. "They helped me launch my first property when I was still fixing bumpers." Everyone welcomed Amira like she'd been there all along. A woman in her 60s handed her a file. "You're his wife now. Might as well know what he's building." Amira opened it. It wasn't just buildings. It was a community housing project for black youth kicked out by their adoptive families. Her eyes snapped to Jalen. He met her gaze. "I didn't forget where I came from. We're going to build something better for kids like us." As the team discussed plans, Amira couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't about money. It was about legacy. She leaned over and whispered, "Why didn't you just tell me who you were when we got married?" He chuckled softly. "If I had, would you have stayed for me? Or for the money?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He already knew. Later that night, back in their apartment, they sat side by side on the floor. No noise. No luxury. Just blueprints between them and a world waiting outside. Amira whispered, "I didn't choose this marriage. But I think I'm choosing this life." Jalen turned his head slowly. "Good. Because the next time someone calls you just a mechanic's wife, you'll own the building they're standing in." Just 2 days after the dinner, Amira received a call. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello." A familiar voice slithered through the speaker. "You think this changes anything, little girl?" "Elise." Amira's pulse quickened, but her voice stayed level. "I think it changed everything." Elise scoffed. "He may have money. But you're still nothing but a charity case. And when he realizes that, he'll throw you out with the trash you came in with." Amira hung up. But the words stuck like poison behind her ribs. That afternoon, Jalen noticed the silence in her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nothing important." But he knew. 2 days later, the poison surfaced again, this time in public. A gossip blog posted a headline. "Who is Jalen Carter's wife, and why are her adoption records sealed?" It included a photo of Amira as a child, and beneath it, bold words. "Rumors say she was adopted after being found abandoned near a shelter." Amira's chest tightened. Her heart sank. Her past wasn't public. It wasn't meant for the internet. It was hers. She ran to the bathroom. Slammed the door. Behind it, Jalen knocked gently. "You're not what they say," he said through the door. "You're what you survive." That evening, Jalen made another phone call. His tone cold. Final. Find out who leaked those records, and shut it down. Within 24 hours, the blog was gone. But Elise wasn't finished. A week later, Amira received an invite to a gala hosted by the Hartleys. A charity event, for underprivileged girls who married into wealth. The invite was dripping with insult. Amira showed Jalen. He smiled calmly and tapped the RSVP line. "Right, attending. And tell them I'm bringing a guest of my own." Amira looked at him, confused. "Who?" His eyes glinted. "The CEO of Carter Capital." The night of the gala arrived like a storm waiting to be unleashed. Spotlights danced across the entrance of the luxury hotel ballroom. Photographers lined the walkway. Glittering guests stepped out of black cars, designers, donors, and whispers. Inside, Elise floated like a queen in a sea of champagne. "Tonight," she said, sipping with glee, "she'll learn where she belongs, under the lights but out of place." She didn't know what was coming. Amira stepped out of the SUV in a midnight blue gown. Hair up. Eyes locked forward. But it was the man beside her that silenced the crowd. Jalen wasn't in his mechanic's clothes. He wore a tailored black tuxedo with a silver tie, no logo, no company name, just confidence and silence. One reporter muttered. "Wait, that's Carter. Carter Capital." Another gasped. "He married her. That's the wife." Elisa's smile froze when they entered. "You made it," she said, voice cold behind fake elegance. Amira smiled back, eyes locked like glass. "Wouldn't miss it." Elisa's eyes darted to Jalen. "Playing dress-up tonight?" He returned her stare. Calm. "Cutting." "No ma'am. Just came to remind everyone who's really writing the checks here." The gala was supposed to spotlight Elisa's charities. But when the MC stepped up to the mic, his first words cracked through the room. "Tonight's largest donor has arrived, please welcome, Mr. Jalen Carter and his wife, founders of the Roots to Rise Foundation, supporting girls displaced by adoption." Gasps spread. The spotlight swung, not to Elise, but to Amira. She stepped forward. "I was once told I'd never matter. That I'd never rise above where I came from. But sometimes, the girl you tried to erase, writes her name in gold." Thunderous applause. Even the reporters stood. Elise stood stiff, wine untouched. Jalen leaned over on his way past her table. "Next time you host a gala, don't invite your headline." Back in their apartment, after the gala, the silence was different. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Amira sat at the edge of the bed, still in her gown, heels kicked off, makeup half smudged, but glowing. Jalen walked in from the kitchen with 2 mugs of tea. "You crushed them tonight," he said with a proud smile. She looked down. "I didn't do it to crush them." He nodded. "I know." She turned to the mirror across the room, saw herself. Not the housemaid. Not the adopted girl. Not the pawn. Just, herself. And for the first time, she liked what she saw. But under the surface, something still tugged at her ribs. "Can I ask you something real?" she said quietly. Jalen sat beside her. "Always. If I didn't have the story I have, if I didn't come from that family, if I wasn't forced to marry you, would you have picked me?" Silence. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. He reached out and took her hand. "I didn't need to pick you. Life did. And I just didn't fight it." She smiled, one tear sliding down her cheek. "I didn't think I'd get love like this. Not after what they told me I was." He kissed her hand softly. "They told you who you were out of fear. I see who you are because of love." The next morning, a call came. It was from a national magazine. "We want to interview you both," the woman said. "Your story's gone viral. From a forced marriage to building an empire together. It's inspiring." Amira paused. Looked at Jalen. He just smiled. "Your voice," he said, "deserves to be louder than their silence." Later that night, she wrote in her notebook. "They tried to break me by giving me less. But life handed me the man with more than they ever had. The girl they tried to erase had become the woman people now looked up to. And her story was only just beginning." A month passed. And in just 30 days, everything had changed. The forced marriage people once whispered about had turned into headlines. From car washer to CEO, the love story that shattered stereotypes. Jalen and Amira Carter, rewriting power, one building at a time. The Roots to Rise Foundation grew overnight, and with it, their mission. Together, they were funding safe homes for abandoned teens, especially young black girls who had aged out of the system. Amira began hosting workshops, speaking at schools, not about money, but about resilience. "You're not where you came from," she'd say. "You're what you do with it." And Jalen? He stood quietly in the background. Never needed the spotlight. But when he spoke, everyone listened. His latest real estate deal. Buying and transforming the same gated neighborhood the Hartleys once bragged about. And the cherry on top. Turning the Hartley mansion into a youth leadership center. The media asked why. Amira answered. Because we don't destroy legacies with anger. We overwrite them with purpose. Elise was nowhere to be seen. She left town weeks ago, humiliated and broke, after years of mismanaging fake charities. Her mask had cracked, and behind it, the world saw the truth. But Amira? She never once said, "I told you so." Because winning wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being able to live without fear. And loving a man who taught her what true wealth looked like. One morning, sitting on a rooftop garden above one of their new buildings, Amira turned to Jalen. "Do you think this started because they hated me?" He shook his head. "No. This started because they feared you." "Feared what?" "That you'd rise. And never look back." And she didn't. The day the Hartley mansion reopened, the air felt different. No velvet ropes. No rich guests. Just young voices. Laughing. Running. Filling rooms that had once echoed with silence and control. The estate had been completely transformed. What was once a cold display of wealth now glowed with purpose. The ballroom? Turned into a study hall. Elisa's vanity room? Now a free therapy space. The garden? A mentoring circle under the open sky. And at the front gate, etched in gold. The Amira Carter Center for Empowered Youth. Amira walked through the halls slowly, memories brushing her shoulders. The staircase where she was once told she'd never rise above a mop. The kitchen she'd been banned from unless cleaning. The room they'd forced her to sew her own wedding dress in. Now. It held shelves of books, art, color, and possibility. Jalen joined her at the center of the grand hall. "You good?" he asked. She turned to him. "I'm more than good. I'm free." Reporters outside asked for quotes. "Any message for Elise Hartley?" Amira didn't flinch. "Tell her thank you. Because sometimes, it's the people who try to bury you that unknowingly plant the seed for your future." A group of young girls entered the building for the first time. One looked just like Amira had at 14, wide-eyed, quiet, uncertain. Amira knelt. "This place is yours now. You don't need to belong to anyone who can't see your worth." The girl smiled. And for the first time in years, Amira felt the chain around her spirit finally drop. Outside, a banner unfurled across the gates. "Power isn't given. It's grown, together." And below it, a photo of Jalen and Amira. Side by side. Not polished. Not posed. Just real. Not a forced marriage. Not a punishment. But a foundation. Theirs. A year later. Jalen and Amira stood beneath a white gazebo in a quiet park they'd built themselves. It wasn't grand. No chandeliers. No red carpets. But it was theirs. The press had begged for access. They said no. Because this wasn't for the cameras. It was for the two people who had walked through fire, and never let go. Amira wore a simple white gown. No diamonds. Just dignity. Her curls fell soft around her shoulders. Her eyes, fierce and free. Jalen wore a cream jacket, no tie, sleeves rolled. His only accessory. A ring he'd crafted from the key to the old garage door, the one that led to the room where it all began. Their vows weren't perfect. They weren't rehearsed. They were real. "You weren't the man they warned me about," she whispered. "You were the man they couldn't control. You weren't the girl they tried to throw away," he said. "You were the woman they feared would rise." No audience. No applause. Just the wind. And a future waiting beyond the vows. Later that night, back in the same garage apartment, they lit a candle between them. "One last night here," Jalen said, eyes soft. "We made it holy," Amira replied. They didn't sleep. They talked about everything, childhood fears, their first awkward conversation, and the exact moment they both realized they were in love. It wasn't when the truth came out. It was when they saw each other as more than circumstance. The next morning, a new key. They opened the doors to their next chapter. A penthouse suite that overlooked the skyline, but held the same warmth as that tiny garage. Because home wasn't walls. It was choice. It was healing. It was love. And somewhere, out in the city, a girl walked past a billboard showing Amira and Jalen's new mentorship project. She paused. Smiled. Because even if her story was starting rough, she now believed. Love doesn't always look like a fairy tale. Sometimes, it looks like grease, grief, and gold underneath.